the Baylor Alumni Tailgate Show. I'm Brooke Bednarz, along with Derek Smith and the voice of the Bears, John Morris. We are so excited that we finally are here for a football season, the 2020 season getting underway, and we hope that this show, as the Tailgate Show, provides a little bit of normalcy for what has been a completely not normal 2020 off season. I'm just excited to be here with you guys. How about you?
Absolutely, Brooke. John, it's always good to see you, especially here at McLane Stadium, and especially to actually play some football.
Yes.
Obviously, we knew this year would have some adjustments. We'd have to roll with the punches a little bit. Don't know, John, that we thought we'd have 4 opening day potential matchups like we do, but the big thing is we're getting started today, the Dave Aranda era against Kansas, and I super excited to see what we have in store today.
Long time coming, hadn't it been? And glad we are finally to the starting line of this season. Who knows what where the finish line is or what that looks like between now and then. But to get to the starting line is a big deal, and so many people have worked so hard to help get us to this point. And we're excited to have a game coming up this evening. Dave Aranda, his first game as the Baylor head coach, and these guys have been working for a long, long time, Brooke, to get ready for tonight.
They have. This is the latest start for Baylor football since the early 1960s, and here we are in 2020. Who would have thought? But we got to talk about those season openers that we were supposed to have. It was started with Ole Miss, then we had La Tech, that was obviously postponed, then we filled it with Houston, that was obviously postponed, but here we are, and by gosh, we are starting with conference football.
It's certainly a strange thing, something Baylor's only done, I believe, 4 times in program history, starting off against a conference opponent. The good news is, and we'll talk about this more on the program, this is an opponent that Baylor's prepared for. They knew off the bat that Kansas would be the Big 12 opening opponent, and once the schedule changed due to COVID, they've been preparing somewhat in the background. Of course, La Tech for part of the time, Houston for part of the time, but it's a familiar opponent. It's an opponent that they have prepared for, and I think for the Dave Aranda era to get started against a team like this adds a level of intrigue, and it's about as normal as I guess it could be in the midst of all the changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as normal as it can be. A lot of things will not be normal. Go to BaylorGameDay.com. That's a new website here that will tell you everything you need to know. If you're watching the game and want to stay tied in to what's going on here, BaylorGameDay.com. If you're coming to the game, want to know about masks. Now, we wore our mask right up until we took the air, okay? So please know that, and we respect that tremendously. But BaylorGameDay.com is a great resource. I asked Coach Aranda this week on the Coaches Show, it's a 6:30 kickoff. I said, are you one who would rather get up and play early, get the game going, or are you okay with a 6:30 kickoff? He said, I'll play anytime. I mean, it was like, you could tell in his voice that he just wants to get out there on the field.
Absolutely. And fortunately, whether you're watching this from the stadium or you're going to be joining us here, we do have 25% fans. Very fortunate to have that. There's even some neat cutouts that are sitting up there. I joked earlier on social media that our fans are so dedicated. They've been in their seats
all weekend long.
Yesterday, waiting for this game. Just really eager to get started, but really fortunate that we're at least going to have the 25% here. And if you are at home and you're tailgating with us while watching this, we do want to encourage you to take a snapshot of your setup. We want to see it, and use hashtag #Sick'em so that we can get it all over everything, and you can join us as part of this 2020 season kickoff.
We would be remiss if we didn't give a shout-out to the Baylor Athletic Facilities team and everyone in the administration who has made this possible. Obviously, when you talk about 25% capacity, not as simple as just saying, okay, we're going to sell 25% of the tickets. There's a lot of work they've done to determine where the seats are, to determine how they can keep families together, parties together, but keep them separate from other parties, how they can help people socially distance throughout the stadium, and a lot of messaging reminding people to wear their masks as long as they're not eating. Of course, if you're eating actively, you can take your mask off. Like John said, we had ours on right up until airtime. But when you're in the stands, just yell a little bit louder to get through that mask. But a fantastic job by Drew Pittman and everyone in the facilities team to make this day a reality, too.
Yeah, so many of those people have just done yeoman's work and layers of work, to make this happen. I would add to that Kenny Boyd, our Associate AD for Health and Wellness. Kenny and his group, really making the protocols, and laying those out and then following through with that in Kenny in conjunction with Baylor University and then the city of Waco and McLennan County and even the state of Texas. So everybody has done their part to get here, and we could take the hour of this show and thank people, and we wouldn't get to everybody because so many people have done such a good job.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And we got to visit with Drew a little bit, and he told us just the immense amount of changes that they've had here. Obviously, the coaching box and sideline where the players are, that's extended to the 15s. Everyone's going to be wearing masks. There are hand sanitizing stations everywhere. Everyone has done an amazing job to make sure that this is something that we could be a part of this season, and I'm just so excited that it's here.
What is it, 180 hand sanitizing stations that were here? I think we had 20 or so in years past, but 180 around the station. So if you're coming to the game, know that there are plenty of opportunities. The 6 feet distancing, that's in place here. Concession stands are open. They would ask you to use a credit card if you can and stay 6 feet around you and anybody else. So all those things are in place, and I think it's going to be a safe, enjoyable evening here at McLane Stadium.
Absolutely, and it's been something that the team's been obviously taking a huge precaution in. Anytime we talk with the players and Coach Aranda, we are talking with them about just how excited they are to, be back on campus and getting ready to play, but just taking all those precautions to where they could get those negative test results and be able to start the season this year.
Absolutely. It's all about player safety, fan safety, and being able to play some football in these crazy conditions that we find ourselves in. A lot of great work has taken place to make this safe, make this fun, and here we are.
Absolutely. Well, we will be right back after this break, but don't go away. We have a lot more to discuss for this game.
Welcoming our new head coach, Dave Aranda.
Are moving to online classes until at least April 3rd.
Pandemic. Its annual spring football game will be canceled.
Big 12 announced their scheduling plan for the upcoming season.
This is where these winding roads have led. I can see a day of gold ahead. It can't be done, impossible, they've said, but I'll get there, I'll get there, I will rise up.
Look at tough, we've talked about tough before. What does it take to break you? What does it take?
We're all like little kids getting back out there, like just ready to play football. So
I think that's a big part of this season. Who can, adapt and stay focused is going to be the team that wins at the end.
Champions do extra. Champions do more.
Together on three. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Right, we're together as a team. There ain't nothing to stop us. When adversity strikes, right, and it starts striking, we're going to walk right into it. Always think of it as this ain't the end of the story. This is where I begin. This is where I start. This is my time.
That is just the start. Watching that, I get excited. It has been a long time coming, and there isn't anyone better to lead the Bears through all of this other than head coach Dave Aranda. What are your thoughts? This is his very first game as a head coach. That's exciting in itself, but to have it so long awaited, it's got to be exciting for him. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one thing I'm excited to see is, teams have a tendency to take on the personality of their head coach. Now, sometimes that's over time, and these guys haven't been together physically as much as even a new coach normally would. But Coach Aranda, as you can tell, has a very calm, cerebral personality. It's no surprise to me that he's bonded with Tony Dungy, who served as something of a mentor, because they have those similar personalities. He keeps things calm, he keeps things simple, and I think that's a good thing to have in the middle of all this. Just watching that, it's interesting. Time has been really strange over these last few months as we've dealt with COVID. I know it has been for the players, and I think for the team it's good to have someone who keeps things on an even keel, who doesn't get too high or too low, and who I think is going to help them really roll with the punches well. I think his personality is a good fit for this strange time.
Yeah, I agree. I love Coach Aranda already. Still getting to know him, but we've had a number of interactions, really, interviews, coaches, shows, things like that. And kudos to Mack Rhodes, who went out and he found and identified Matt Rule. And people said, who is Matt Rule? And look what he did in 3 short years here at Baylor. And then had to go out and find somebody again, and he found Dave Aranda. So well done, Mack Rhodes, in identifying Dave Aranda and getting him here. And the staff that he's put together is terrific. And it's just like Derek said, his personality is such that I think it was perfect for this time, that he never got too high and he never seemed to get too low. Maybe he did in private moments, but he just was set the perfect tone for this team as they work through the COVID and work through a lot of Zoom calls and meetings that way with his team and staff.
I was about to say, I feel like everyone these days is definitely a Zoom expert. You at home, I'm sure you can attest to that as well. But that was one thing that they really talked about, is Coach Aranda said normally when you come into a new team, you get to know the players and their personalities through their performance on the field. And unfortunately, that was not the case for Baylor. And he had to kind of do that to where he was getting to know the players as people first. And he said that that's a huge benefit. And I think that's true. They were doing different unique things, making sure that they weren't just getting to know their individual coach for their position group, but they were taking the time to get to know the entire staff as a whole. And I think that says a lot about Coach Aranda and this new staff that he put together, that they are investing into these players as people and not just athletes.
And I think it says a lot about Coach Aranda that he kept on 2 important members from the prior staff, in Joey McGuire and Sean Bell. I think that's certainly been a help, a benefit to him to get to know the players as he comes back. And another interesting connection was that he actually watched film on Baylor when LSU was getting ready to prepare for Oklahoma. The last time he took the field as a coach, as a defensive coordinator, it was in the national championship game, winning the national championship with LSU. Oddly enough, the same place Baylor last played a football game. But he actually watched Baylor film, and he was impressed by what he saw. I know a lot of turnover on the defense, but he saw a lot of players on offense that are back playing again this year. And I just think he's been able to get a little sense about what the team was all about last year. And more than that, he has that experience coming back with Coach McGuire and Coach Bell, who can help him know a little bit about the culture and the people as individuals.
Yeah, and I would add David Wetzel to that group also.
Yes,
David was a key member to stay on the staff this year, and it's funny that Coach Aranda's first game as a head coach happens to be against a guy that hired him at LSU, Les Miles, when he was the head coach at LSU. He hired Dave as his defensive coordinator, so now they go against each other, and Dave, I know, has the greatest respect for Les Miles and DJ Elliott, who he worked with and is the defensive coordinator at at Kansas now. So that's a nice subplot to this story today, this game. It's a big game. It's a big date. Derek, yesterday was a big date also. The 25th of September.
Yes.
Brooks' birthday yesterday. Lindy, thank you very much. So got a few little cupcakes for you there. So happy birthday to you. Yeah, this is our version of the tailgate right here. Happy birthday to you.
And thanks for all of your hard work in putting this show together. Happy birthday. Good way to celebrate.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to make sure you all, we're going to take a picture with this and post it on social media with #Sick'em. So be sure that you do the same so we can join you guys in your tailgates as well. Don't go away. We will be right back with more of the Baylor Alumni Tailgate Show when we return. Welcome back to the Baylor Alumni Tailgate Show, connecting the Baylor family worldwide. We are so excited to introduce the first of our guests on this show. He's a guest just for this time. He's going to be a regular for sure. But Elliot Coffey, we are so happy to have you here, defensive analyst for us, former linebacker for the Bears.
Linebacker.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. We're happy to have you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here. This is the fourth time we've tried to do this, so I'm glad that we're out here. We're going to play some football.
The charm.
That's right. That's right. So we're going to break down some football today. We're going to talk about these Bears. They're a little bit newer this year than what we've seen in the past. We've got a lot of guys out there that you probably haven't heard about, so it's going to be exciting to kind of see the new mix. But yeah, glad to be here.
So what are your thoughts? I want to dive right in. We just finished with John Morris, the voice of the Bears. We wrapped up with him, and how we ended that last segment was talking about the obvious connection that is Kansas head coach Les Miles and our head coach Dave Aranda, that the fact that they worked together. Coach Miles actually hired Coach Aranda to be his defensive coordinator at LSU back in 2016.
Yeah.
So we now, as the Baylor Bears, have a very defensive-minded head coach. As a defensive guy yourself, what are your thoughts on that?
Defense wins championships, right? Defense wins championships. And so I think, the last time around with Coach Rule, he left this team in fantastic shape. That was a team that was defensive first. Ultimately, Charlie and the guys came in and did what we needed to do to win a lot of games. But defensively, what Coach Aranda has done, he won a national championship last year with LSU. This is a ton of talent. This is a scheme that's going to come out. It's going to look a little bit different than what we're used to. We're going to see a couple different fronts. You're going to see an almost entirely new back five in the safety position, only one corner coming back. So you're going to see some good football played. You're going to see something that's a little bit different, but ultimately you'll like what you see.
People have called Coach Aranda a bit of a mad scientist on defense, which is funny given his personality.
That's right.
Where does that mad scientist moniker come from when you look at his past defenses?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I mean, if you watch his scheme, you never know what you're looking at. Look, you've got maybe 3 down linemen. You may have 4 down linemen. You may have no down linemen, right? You may have 5 guys that are standing up that are mixing around and moving. You've got a safety that's playing at linebacker. Then all of a sudden his hand's in the dirt, and you're like, I don't know what I'm looking at right here. And he expects the flexibility from his players out there to understand at some point you may be a safety, at some point you may be a corner, at some point you may be a linebacker, right? And so he's moving these guys around all these different spots.
What would you say is the benefit of that? Because when you look at that roster, the returners, there's only real 2 returning starters. There's obviously been some guys who have gotten in, made impact for the Bears, but when we look at the starters, there's only 2, Terrell Bernard and Raleigh Tejada. The fact that they're going to be so used to being flexible and moving around in all those different positions, do you see that as a benefit?
I do. I think it's a competitive edge just because you don't have any film of it. Right? You see a guy in one front, you may think it's cover 3, it's actually cover 4, maybe it's cover 2, right? So you just don't know what the guys are looking at from a defensive line standpoint. If you can confuse the front, if you can have the offensive line not sure who the mic is, where to set the pass protection, or even where to set the run, then you're going to put them in positions to be out of the spot and ultimately make big plays, and that's what they want to do.
People who follow Baylor football this year are going to hear terms like Jack and Star when broadcasters and analysts are talking about Baylor football. When you think of Jack, you've got that pass rusher. You've got Star, which has been called different things under different defensive coordinators at Baylor. Can you give us a little 101 on those positions?
Yeah, so your Jack's going to be an outside linebacker kind of guy. I mean, he's somebody that you're going to see hand in the dirt that's going to have to play run responsibility. With 3 true defensive linemen, that Jack is going to be the guy that's on the fourth guy on the line that's going to have to be the one that sets the edge. And at times, be someone that drops into coverage. That star position is going to be more of a hybrid of a linebacker and a safety position. Jalen Petrie is going to be the guy that we're going to see out there the majority of the game here today. He's a guy that has played linebacker traditionally for us, but is a smaller body, so one that can move around and be flexible for inside receivers. So be ready to see those 2 positions kind of move back and forth.
We talked a little bit, you mentioned earlier, just the fact that Coach Aranda really leaned into building this staff. He brought in people that he's known and trusted. DC Ron Roberts, they coached together at Delta State back in the day, so they know each other. He found someone that he can trust, but then he also kept associate head coach Joey McGuire, who switched a few years ago from the offensive side of the ball to the defensive side of the ball, which that's always got to be a plus. Sure. But I've never seen someone more enthusiastic about takeaways, and the takeaway 3 is what they're calling it, I believe. But just tell us a little bit about that and why it's so important that that be a goal of this mindset. I mean, he is firing off texts, I believe, to them all the time. Just little subtle reminders of, hey, we're trying to get that one more takeaway.
I'll tell you what, defense wins championships, but turnovers win games, right? Turnovers, especially in college football, change the complexion of the game. If you're behind, look at what Kansas State did to Oklahoma today. 3 turnovers, the number 3 team in the country goes down at home to a team that lost to a Sun Belt team last week, right? And so turnovers, as you know, can be a huge changing point for a game, or turning point for a game. And so that's going to be a huge thing. But really thinking about Ron Roberts coming on with Coach Aranda, look, you want some continuity. This is a coach that has never been a head coach before. We know that he's done phenomenal, whether it was at Wisconsin, whether it was at Utah State, or whether it was at LSU. He's had a ton of success where he's been, but you want to have people around you that understand your scheme, that understand the X's and O's, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, and that's what he has in Ron Roberts.
And Ron Roberts came to Baylor from Louisiana Lafayette. They obviously had a good amount of success there. What do you see from him specifically and what he's going to bring to the Bears this year?
He's going to bring an intensity. I mean, he's a guy that's been around the game for over 30 years. I mean, he's one of those coaches that when he steps on the field, his presence is known. And I think the big thing that you can expect from these guys, they're going to play fast, disciplined, downhill football.
You know, again, you mentioned, Brooke, 2 starters coming back this year. You talk about the turnovers, going back to that. I think this is going to be a defense that is going to find its own, and maybe quickly. But if it takes a little time for guys to get used to it, those turnovers can be the equalizer when you're facing some of the better teams in the Big 12.
Absolutely. I mean, the big thing now, have the kids play flexible, have them play fast. We haven't had a ton of time to see them on the field. They haven't played against anybody else yet, you know, having no spring and having no true summer. And so right now, keep them flexible. Turnovers are going to be kind of that edge that takes us over when we drop the ball a couple times.
Absolutely. Well, I'm super excited to see the Bears take the field. Obviously, we're diving into all things defense, but we're going to talk a little bit more about how 2020 and all those new regulations. Look, I'm already.
That was very good.
Good catch. I am ready. I'm hands team. Here we are. All right, we'll be right back with more from the Baylor Alumni Tailgate Show.
And we welcome you back to the Baylor Alumni Tailgate Show, getting ready for the 2020 season opener. Baylor in Kansas here at beautiful McLane Stadium. Glad to be with you here on KCEN TV and the Baylor Sports Network from Learfield IMG College multimedia program here in 2020 as we count you down to kick off just a little over an hour and a half away. Well, obviously, as we've talked about on the program, 2020 has been a strange year, and it's going to be a year that impacts future seasons, perhaps in some positive ways, because the NCAA has ruled that this year is not counting against players' eligibility, which means a little bit of up for grabs. You've got a free play here, if you will, which means a lot of guys who are playing this year who would have been seniors are going to have another year. Elliot, from a coaching standpoint, a lot more experience coming back, which is a good thing. On the other hand, you're going to have to make some decisions about playing time in future years. They're going to be tough.
There's some guys that you're ready to graduate, right? You're waiting for them to kind of move on and see what's next. But, yeah, I mean, it's good. There's going to be guys, particularly for offensive and defensive linemen or any position that needs to gain a little bit of weight to really fill out the position that they're going to play. This is going to be huge for them. To have another year in the system, to have another year to get healthy, and if guys injured players, right, are going to have another year to get after it. And so it's helpful in that sense, but really and truly managing a roster, managing a full roster of 100 kids, it's going to be tough when you have people that, as you're looking at your recruiting class, look, we've got a chock full, we got 25 people in that recruiting class coming in, right? You're going to have to figure out who's staying and who's going, and so that's not just here at Baylor, that's all over the country. And so really figuring out how you're going to manage the players that are sticking around versus the ones that are leaving is going to be a huge thing watching moving forward.
Absolutely, and I know they were so excited about that redshirt rule, getting the chance to play in those 4 games. Now they're going to get the chance to play in the entire season.
That's right.
And it still potentially count. This year, obviously, the Big 12 came out that they were going to play some of the other conferences, specifically the Pac-12, chose to wait, and now they're kind of getting to go, and all Power 5 conferences will be playing. But that allowed us to get some transfers, including 5th-year Jake Burton, that we're going to get to see him on the field in action this year. But what we're really looking forward to is a special somebody, a 5th year who has chosen to return this year.
Although they were born and raised in California, the Rodoni siblings have made Texas home and the Baylor family an extension of their own.
Here's the pitch. Called strike 3. That's a no-hitter by Gia Rodoni.
Gia Rodoni is the starting pitcher for the Baylor softball team, and her name is already etched into the record books. But she's not the only Rodoni on campus.
Thanks to Gia, actually, with her connections, she helped me get recruited by Baylor. She talked to her coach, which talked to Baylor's football coaches, and it kind of helped me get seen by them. And so really, I am here because of Gia. Without her, I'd either be at a school back home in California or somewhere else doing something different.
Thor earned a roster spot back in 2016 and has been working to prove himself ever since.
I just think it's nice just to have someone here for support and not many miles away. So having a brother, Thor, who also plays here, understands the work that needs to be put in and the time scheduling. So it was just a good transition for all of us to have a little piece of home here in Texas.
For like the navigation throughout college, yeah, Gia's been huge for that, because I see a lot of freshmen that come here that are kind of lost. Like they kind of look at their teammates and stuff like, hey, where's this, where's that? Like, how's this happen? With Gia though, she was always like that piece of home for me. Like anytime I got homesick, I'd either go to her apartment, or anytime I wasn't feeling well, like it was always Gia there to support me, which I was super thankful for. Without her, well, college experience would be a whole different thing.
But the Rodoni siblings have had anything but the typical college experience. The COVID-19 pandemic left Gia and Thor with a tough decision. Should they start the next chapter of their lives or come back for one more season?
Right when our season had got canceled, I was obviously very devastated, and I knew in that moment that if we were given another year, I was coming back regardless. And so the longer I was home, I became more at peace. If like NCAA doesn't give us another year, like I'm okay, like softball isn't who I am, and there's more to life than it. But then they did give us a year, and I really felt led to give it back to my coaching staff that they've poured in the last 5 years to me, on the field, off the field when I was injured. So I felt like I owed it to them.
So with Gia coming back for her 6th year, it was now Thor's turn. With his degree already completed and a job waiting for him back home, would he return for a 5th year?
The choice to come back for both my sister and I, we both talked to each other a lot about it, honestly, and because I look up to her. She did her 5 years and she came back for her 5th year, and she basically explained to me, saying my father is like, you can never get this time back. The second I ran and stepped on campus and spoke to us the first day, I was hooked. You got that revamp of like the feeling of family, and it's like, I'm not ready to leave this yet.
So Thor went back to work, and his effort and dedication to the team was recognized. He earned a coveted scholarship.
Guys, I'm proud of you guys. You guys have earned it. It's important for me. It's important for your coaches to know that when you do things right, people notice them. When you help other people, people notice them. Right? When you play by the rules and you do what's asked of you and you do more than that, right? Good things happen to you. Proud of you guys.
So after when I was all said and done, I went to my truck and I called my dad. Like, first off, I started crying, I'll be honest. I cried first. It's just such a proud moment as a son. Like, you could call your father and say, Dad, look what I've done.
But of course, that wasn't the only phone call he had to make.
Gia was the fun one. When I called her, she didn't answer because she was in class. So I sent her a bunch of text messages saying, like, hey, 911 emergency, call me back instantly. So she stepped out of class, I think, and she called me back and I told her. And probably hers probably the most special, just because we both been here so long together. And whenever she told me how proud she is of me, like she always is too, like my dad. But it just meant the world here from Gia, because we've been here together for 4 years now, 5 years, and just seeing your sister get excited for you is kind of awesome.
I was in tears when he had told me, just because I know how hard he works and he's ultimately earned it, in my opinion. So I was just super proud of him and everything he's poured into that program.
Gia and Tharadoni, a great Baylor family. Great job sharing their story, Brooke. We appreciate that. They do so much, of course, in softball and football. And just like the Radonis, the Baylor family is a well-connected family, and that's a big deal in part due to our title sponsor, Baylor Alumni, bringing the Baylor family together. The Baylor Alumni Tailgate Show rolls on. We'll take a look at the offense and catch you down to kickoff a little over 90 minutes away here from McLane Stadium. We'll take a break and be back with more in a moment.
Welcome back to the Baylor Alumni Tailgate Show. I hope you're having a good time with us, as I know we're having a lot of fun. Derek, we have to introduce the former Baylor quarterback, Mr. Seth Russell. Seth, we are super excited to have you join and be an offensive analyst for us. So thanks for joining.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I'm pretty amped. Anytime you have some guys out on the field playing some Baylor football, man, there's nothing like it.
Well, it has been long awaited for sure. Super excited to have them out. But right before, during the break, you were telling us some news that maybe not everyone knows. You have some history with Kansas. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my senior year of high school, I was originally committed to Kansas. And then the Turner Gill stuff kind of happened. He got fired and opened up my recruitment. And luckily, the head guy here, I think some of y'all know him by like Robert Griffin or something like that. RG3, I think, is his memo or whatever. And he ended up declaring to the draft, and I came in and met Bryles and Montgomery, who was the quarterback coach at the time, and things just kind of clicked. And the next day they offered me, and it was history since then. So it's a pretty exciting deal.
Absolutely. That worked out pretty well for Baylor. And, of course, we're glad to have you here with your insights on the program. And let's dive right into that and talk about offensively, particularly at the position where it all starts, quarterback. Larry Fedora coming in and bringing in the new tempo offense. It's a new look for the Baylor offense, a new look for Charlie Brewer at this level, but not at the high school level. He was 30-2 in high school at Lake Travis with the tempo offense. So it's obviously something he knows a little bit about. How do you see that playing into his strengths?
Yeah, I think it's not going to be anything new to him. Him going to high school, Lake Travis. I mean, they breed him there. As it's been proven, and so it's going to be really cool to see how they incorporate his strengths. Especially with the previous staff being able to manage the time, manage the team up and down the field. I think it's going to be nice. Getting under center, feeling comfortable there, as well as in the shotgun. I don't know how much that's going to happen. Obviously, down and distance is going to determine that, but I think it's going to play right into his strengths, right into a lot of these guys' strengths. A lot of these guys probably played a lot of spread, tempo offense in high school, which is kind of all it's adapting to. So it's going to be really exciting to see.
Well, we'll break down Charlie a little bit more coming up, but I do want to talk about, obviously, he is a 4-year senior starter, along with a solid group of returners. 7 returning on the offensive side compared to the 2 on the defensive side. What kind of a benefit is that, just to have a veteran group coming back with a new head coach and a new coaching staff?
There's nothing like it. It's a lot harder whenever you don't have guys that have worked together before. All these guys know how they work, they know how they run. It's going to be huge because that communication is going to be huge these first several games, with Baylor's being first game, Kansas second. There's going to be some probably miscues early, but it's going to be really cool to see their camaraderie, their communication on the field, how they go up and down the field. I'm really looking forward to it. I know these guys are really going to excel and have a great time.
We talk about the quarterback position with this tempo offense, but it also opens up some holes for the running game as well. And ideally what you find yourself in, if you find yourself in third down, it's 3rd and short rather than 3rd and long. But breaking away from the quarterback position, but thinking in terms of linemen. Of course, Coach Wickline has worked with Coach Fedora before at Florida. They have a history together, the offensive coordinator and offensive line coach. How do you see this offense impacting other positions?
Oh, if you can establish a line of scrimmage, everything else is just poetry in motion. There's a lot of good things that can come from that. If you run the ball, a minimum 3 yards each play, you get first downs all up and down the field, and that's really going to condense the defense, really focus on that, and open up the passing game for Charlie, which is where I think his strength is. Short to midterm, long plays, and he's very accurate. Probably one of the most accurate quarterbacks I've ever seen throw the ball, and it's going to be really good to see.
Poetry in motion. I really like that. We're going to have to write that down, poetry in motion.
He just threw down the gauntlet. Now Elliot has to say something clever like that,
pressure,
too. Yeah,
no pressure. We'll see what he has up his sleeve. But I do want to talk to you, obviously, like you pointed out, lots of different weapons on this Baylor offensive side of the ball. And we were talking with Tyquan Thornton earlier this week. He's super excited. Charlie Brewer talks a lot about how he has kind of stepped up to lead that wideout group. What do you anticipate to see from him as he gets on the field more this year?
I think it's just go out and prove. Every time you step on the field, nothing's going to be given to you. The other team's going to scout you if you're one of the best players, or expect to be doubled, whatever that may be like. And I think with him, it's just a mindset. Go out and attack. I've played with some of the best, with Corey Coleman and those guys, and they were always double teamed, but they always find a way to get open, get the ball, and get in the end zone.
Obviously, Tyquan Thornton's going to command a lot of attention from fans, from opposing defenses, but you've got a guy in R.J. Sneed who showed himself to be very dependable last year, a speed guy in Josh Fleeks. It seems like you have not only a lot of good receivers coming back, but it really balances well in receivers who bring a different skill, a different element to the offense.
Absolutely. I think with if you can be speed, in and out of cuts, if you're a possession receiver, whatever that is, defense are going to have to respect that. And it's going to be really cool to see the motion of how they're going to put things together. Fedora with a lot of the tempo, moving a lot, making the defense think. And I think it's going to be something that's we're going to really look forward to, kind of get back into my playing days with the tempo, getting up and down the field quickly, scoring a lot of touchdowns, and hopefully it'll be pretty exciting.
Do you see a benefit in this tempo offense to utilize more of those weapons, whether it be the running back group or the wideouts? Do you feel that this type of offense is going to be better suited for the Baylor Bears?
I think it's going to fit in perfectly. If you don't have just a stud guy that you can double team every time, if you know you have 3 or 4 receivers that can catch the ball, get in the end zone, I think that's going to be something for Charlie that's going to be easy for him to, he may not have to go to one person. He can go to these other 3 or 4 guys, and if need be, he can tuck and run it too. He's a phenomenal athlete, but I think that's going to be something huge for him down the field. Is staying healthy obviously is number one, but those other guys, just give them the ball, let them make plays, make your job a lot easier.
Well, you heard it right there. We're going to dive in with Charlie Brewer up next, so don't go away, and be sure to be posting #SicEm. We want to see your tailgates, presented by the Baylor Alumni.
And we welcome you back to the Baylor Alumni Tailgate Show, the 2020 season opener at long last for the Bears here at McLane Stadium. Baylor and Kansas kicking it off at 6:30 this evening. Of course, Charlie Brewer back under center or in the shotgun again this year, and his 4th season is starting at quarterback for the Bears. Wearing number 5 this year, something a little different. The first time he has had a single-digit number, and Baylor had great success last year, and they did so really even in spite of their field general battling a number of injuries during the season in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia. Toughness certainly a big part of his personality, a big part of what he's all about, but what he's trying to do now this year is to battle back from that. Seth Russell, obviously, that's something you've had to deal with in your career twice, dealing with injury, neck injury in 2015, an ankle injury in 2016. What did you learn about coming back mentally and physically that Charlie could benefit from?
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. A lot of these guys who have played football, fortunately, injury is just kind of part of it, and it all determines on how your mindset is. After the neck injury, probably the first 3 or 4 months, I thought my life was over, honestly. But no, being around the team and being part of the camaraderie that comes with it was really encouraging on that sense. And then the ankle was, season ending, Baylor ending. That one was a little bit harder to overcome, just because overcame one, going to another season, doing good enough, and then then something happens after that. But with Charlie, I think it's going to be huge for him, just a mindset, wrapping things up and being able to do what he needs to do.
Well, earlier this week, I was able to catch up with another single digit like Charlie, who has had his fair share of overcoming injuries, and he gives us a little inside look at why he's so excited to finally get back on the field this year.
Second down play. Brewer fakes the handoff. Jump pass to the front right corner of the end zone to Gavin Holmes, who makes the catch.
In 2017, Gavin Holmes, a true freshman, was already finding the end zone and making an impact for the Bears.
AT&T, had all my family there, and I ended up scoring on the very first drive.
Second down and goal from there. Swing pass, right side. Trying to get to the corner. He does. Gavin Holmes into the end zone. Touchdown, Baylor.
And then the next series we came out, got hit in my knee, and I heard something pop.
Passes near sideline to Gavin Holmes. Man, he is hit hard, trying to spin away from a tackler.
My whole leg just kind of went numb. Couldn't even, get off the field, my own 2 feet. So I figured something was wrong. Something was pretty bad.
We were concerned, and we ordered an MRI, and it was confirmed later that he did, in fact, tear his ACL.
I kind of had the mindset that I was a freshman. I had plenty of time to, recover and come back from this, and I hadn't come back from injuries before, so I wasn't really. I knew it was going to be a difficult process, a long process, but I was up for it. I was ready for it.
Following surgery, Holmes went through months and months of rigorous rehab and ultimately missed the first half of the following season. But in early November of 2018, his doctors cleared him just in time for the game against Oklahoma State.
I was only playing a couple special teams and stuff like that just to get my feet wet again.
Nearly a year to the day from his injury, Holmes had returned to the game. But unfortunately, it would be extremely short-lived.
That Monday practice came back. It was probably my first full practice where I had nothing holding me back. I was full go back with the team and all that. And I just went up to catch a ball, came down, planted, kind of twisted wrong or whatever. And my knee just gave out.
Holmes immediately got an MRI, and later that night received a phone call from then head coach Matt Rule.
And I could just hear it in his voice that, something was wrong. And he told me that the MRI showed that I tore it again, and I lost it. I broke down. I just didn't know why it kept happening to me, why this kept getting taken away from me. So, yeah, that was probably one of the most difficult times in my life.
It's such an emotional thing for athletes of this caliber to have that happen to them, and then to have it a second time just kind of ratchets it up.
Because of the nature of his re-tear and the complications that came from it, Holmes had to have a second and third surgery on his left knee in under 2 years' time.
I kind of flipped a switch in my head and knew that, if I just sat and felt sorry for myself, I wasn't going to get anywhere. So that was my biggest thing, was just to treat this kind of like, I've been through this once, I can do it again.
Fast forward to 2020, a year full of unknown, and for fully recovered Holmes and the Bears, a period of waiting for their football season to start.
Being prepared for the uncertain, that's what I've been doing for 3 years. I just never knew when my time was going to come, or how my knee was going to hold up. Basically, I've just kind of been, leaning on my faith. And I think, like I said, I think that's what we've been doing as a team. Yeah, it's uncertainty. We don't know. We didn't know when we were going to play, if we were going to play, but we kind of all just had the mindset that we were going to be ready if that was the case.
Holmes has been fighting for the chance to get back on the field with his teammates since November of 2017. And although he has scars instead of stats to show for these past few years, his teammates recognized his exceptional work ethic and chose to honor it this season by voting him a single digit.
That meant the world to me. That was a goal of mine coming in this season. And I think it's just a testament to the work that I put in to come back. And like you said, I haven't played in the game in a long time. So I was just really thankful and appreciative that the guys saw how much time and work that I was putting in. And I'm really proud of myself, actually, just because, I learned a lot about myself during this process, and it's not an easy thing to do. And I was able to do it twice.
And welcome back to the Baylor Alumni Tailgate Show. Getting you ready for Baylor and Kansas in the season opener here on KCN-TV and the Baylor Sports Network from Learfield IMG College. Coming up, we'll switch to radio only on our flagship station, ESPN Central Texas. John Morris, the voice of the Bears, will visit with John Werner of the Waco Tribune-Herald live from the booth. We are brought to you by Toyota. Enter the Toyota Tailgate to Go sweepstakes for a chance to win 2 at-home tailgate parties, one for you and one for a friend. Visit ToyotaTailgateToGo.com or text touchdown to 22454. All right, Seth, Brooke, Elliott, time to go inside the numbers. Each week, we're going to pick an area of the game where statistics tell us a story that we think could have a big impact on the game. This week, we're going to look at the running game and keeping Charlie upright. Last year, if you remember, in Baylor's 61-6 win over Kansas, Baylor actually had 264 rushing yards, nearly 100 yards over their season average. Far and away, Elliott, their best offensive outing of the season.
Yeah.
And certainly from the standpoint defensively, it really seemed like they kept Kansas off balance all game long and were able to keep Charlie in those manageable down and distances.
That's right, man. There's a couple things that come from being able to run the football. Number one, controlling the clock. That's a big thing that you want to do, is be able to control the clock. You want to keep your defense fresh. The more you can run the football, the more you control the clock, the fresher your defense is, and then ultimately the better you play on defense, the more turnovers you generate. And then the big thing as well for Charlie is that it keeps the game two-dimensional. Right, the big thing you want to do is allow Charlie to get the ball out of his hand quickly, right? That's a big thing we want to do, but you also want Charlie to feel comfortable in the pocket, right? You want to know that if it's 3rd and 3, he doesn't have to scramble for his life. You can put the ball into your running back's hand and you get you the first down with no questions asked. And so that's what I'm expecting to see here today.
Seth, last year a stat I thought was very interesting. Baylor was 11-0 when running the football 30 or more times in the game, 0-3 when rushing 29 times or less. What does that number tell you?
Well, that number tells you run the ball. You know, I mean, it's proven time and time again. You control the ball up and down the field. You wear down the defense. That opens up big plays down the field. And I think with Fedora, you know, it's going to be really, really nice to see. You know, those big play shots, I think, will come more than they did last year, which will be really exciting to see. And then, you know, the run game is proven time and time again that if you can do it, if you can pound it down the throat, then that opens up a lot for Charlie to throw the ball.
Brooks, 7 rushing touchdowns for the Bears in the game against Kansas last year. I don't know if we're counting on that today, but
I mean, I would not be upset if we had 7 rushing touchdowns. So if they want to just cash that in again, I'd be all for it.
I support it as well.
So that's what we'll be watching. So after the game, Elliot and I on the post-game fan forum on our flagship station, ESPN Central Texas, we'll take a look at those numbers and see if they indeed played a big factor in the game today and Baylor's success, hopefully, against Kansas coming up here. As we get ready in the final minute here, Brooke, we're going to throw it upstairs in a moment to radio.
We are.
Voice of the Bears, John Morris, will continue the Baylor Alumni Tailgate Show on our flagship station.
Yes, but we hope you guys have had an incredible time with us and come back next time. Our next home game in October. I can't believe it's almost October.
Yeah, homecoming.
Yes, it'll be so exciting. But thank you all for tuning in, whether you've been joining us here at the stadium or you're at home. We really want to see how you are taking part in finding some normalcy with this 2020 season. And so hopefully this tailgate show, as we break down the Baylor Bears and the kickoff of the highly anticipated 2020 season, we hope that you've enjoyed it and will come back next time to join us again. And
2 hours before.
Seth, yes, 2 hours before always.
Always.
So Elliot and Seth, thank you so much for making the trip here to Waco. We're happy to have you. And I think it's time for some football. We are so close to kickoff, and John's going to carry it for us upstairs.